Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Fitzpatrick and I work in the Compliance and Enforcement Unit. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes to provide you with some context around the Compliance Unit and the type of work that we do. Some of the matters that I will be discussing are the functions of the Compliance Unit, the legal duties of charity trustees, the key developments in the Compliance Unit so far, raising a concern with the Compliance Unit and what it means if your charity is the subject of a concern. Some statistics in relation to concerns that already have been received in the Compliance Unit, and then some common issues that we have identified through our compliance work. So the Compliance and Enforcement Unit delivers on the regulator's statutory functions. So that's the promotion of compliance by charity trustees with their legal duties. And I will touch on this in more detail in the next slide. Encouraging and facilitating the better administration and management of charities, the provision and information of advice, ensuring compliance with the Charities Act 2009, and carrying out investigations under Part 4 of the Charities Act. So the legal duties of charity trustees, and I'm sure everybody is well aware of them, but just to run through them briefly. Ensure that your charity is carrying out its charitable purpose for the public benefit. As charity trustees, you must ensure the charitable purpose of your charity, the public benefit that it is providing, and the extent and powers of the duties that you have as charity trustees. For example, if a situation arises where there is a personal, private benefit, as charity trustees, you must look at this and discuss, is it necessary, reasonable, and ancillary to the furtherance of the public benefit. Comply with your charity's governing document. You must read and comply with the terms of your own governing document. How often do you read it and review it? Does your governing document need to be amended? And if it does, are you aware that you need prior consent and must notify the Charities Regulator if you wish to make certain amendments? For example, the change of your charity name or the change of the charitable purpose. Number 3, being accountable and comply with the law. Are you complying and reporting the requirements that apply to your charity? Are you keeping all of your charity details up to date on the register? How often do you log in to your account and check to ensure that the information stored on the register is accurate and up to date at all times? Are you being transparent with your stakeholders and donors? Number 4, managing your charity's resources responsibly. As charity trustees, you must manage the assets of your charity and ensure that all the property of your charity is accounted for and documented properly. You must ensure that your charity's assets are only used to achieve the charitable purpose. Number 5, act in the best interests of your charity. You must always do what is best for your charity. A charity does not belong to one person. And as charity trustees, you must undertake your responsibilities diligently, and you must all work together with other charity trustees in order to promote the purpose of your charity. As I said, a charity does not belong to one person. Act with reasonable skill and care. Although voluntary, you should always allow enough time to ensure that your role is performed effectively, attending and contributing at regular meetings for charity trustees. You can delegate the day-to-day activities, but you cannot delegate the legal responsibilities of being a charity trustee. The Compliance Unit would always recommend to seek out specialist advice when needed. Review the performance of the Board of Charity Trustees regularly. Maybe additional trustees are required with a specific skill set, for example, accountancy, IT, communications, or a legal background, but this will all depend on the needs of your own charity. So some additional duties under the Charities Act. Ensure your charity is registered in the Register of Charities. Keep proper books of account, prepare and submit an annual report, and comply with directions that are issued by the Charities Regulator. There is also an obligation under Section 59 of the Charities Act 2009, and are you aware of this as charity trustees? If information comes into your possession as a relevant person, and a charity trustee is a relevant person defined in the Act, of an offence where under the Theft and Fraud Act has been or is being committed, you are obliged to notify the authority in writing by submitting a report to us. For example, the report should contain what happened, who was involved, has it been reported to An Garda Síochána, what actions have the charity trustees taken, or what actions have been put in place to mitigate the risk of something like this ever happening again in the future. So just moving on to some key developments in the compliance unit since its establishment. We've published some public notices on compliance matters. For example, a public notice was issued in relation to clothing collection labels, with the intention of making the public aware and informing them on how to research and make themselves knowledgeable before they make a donation to a charitable organisation or an organisation that they think is a charity. Search the Register of Charities and inform yourself that this is a registered charity before you make any type of donation. The online concerns form. This allows members of the public to raise concerns about charities or other organisations that they may have. For example, concerns relating to where a charity trustee may have breached their duties, or where there is a serious loss or damage to a charity, its assets or beneficiaries. It could also be where a charity does not meet the legal requirement to be a charity, or where a body is representing itself as a charity in Ireland when it is not. So this brings me up to the publication of our concerns policy. This document explains to members of the public how the Charities Regulator will deal with concerns. The policy explains matters that we can and cannot deal with. So for example, we will not get involved in internal disputes or issues that are not within our remit and do not relate to charity law. For example, contractual employment issues. Complaints relating to services about the charity, these should be brought up directly with the charity itself. The policy also sets out how to raise a concern about a charity, how we will deal about concerns, what to expect if your charity is the subject of a concern, considerations when providing information to us, and how we decide on the income. So I will touch a little more on all of the above in the next couple of slides. But I'd just like to point out that concerns are received in the compliance unit through our online concerns form. However, we do receive them in a number of different ways, such as media reports, our own monitoring work, and other types of regulatory work within the unit. So how to raise a concern. If you, charity trustees, volunteers, staff, members of the public, if anybody has a concern or information about a charity and they would like to raise it with us, you can raise a concern directly on our website. If you log on to charitiesregulator.ie, and it's the fourth over information for the public. If you hover over this, it's the second down on this list, and you'll find all the information on how to raise a concern, our concerns policy, and the online form itself. So we receive hundreds of concerns every year from members of the public. They can be raised anonymously with us. If you do that, obviously we cannot go back to you to seek any further information or evidence, but we will treat that concern exactly the same way as we would if you had given your name and address or contact details to us. So once a concern is received in the compliance unit, we will acknowledge it and risk assess it in line with our concerns policy. We take an evidential, risk-based and proportionate approach to regulating charities. So this means targeting our resources at the areas of highest risk and where we think our intervention will have the greatest impact. We assess concerns to establish whether we have the legal power to act, whether there is a risk to the charity's assets, whether there is abuse of the charitable status, or whether there is a risk to the charity sector as a whole. We also consider if the issue should be dealt with by another regulator or whether it's within our remit at all. So I suppose the big question is what to expect if your charity is the subject of a concern. We will weigh up all the information that we have obtained during the course of our own inquiries, and we will consider any ongoing risk to the charity, including its assets and beneficiaries. If non-compliance or harm to the charity is identified, we will explain to you what the concern is in general terms. So, for example, financial accountability, governance issues, transparency. And we will request further information from you in order to give us a better understanding of the concern that has been raised and how your charity operates generally. In making our decision, we will consider if the actions of the charity trustees were misguided or deliberate, if there has been any corrective action already taken, and the stated intentions of the charity trustees going forward. We will then decide whether we need to take any action in terms of our formal powers, or where it is more appropriate and proportionate for us to provide guidance and support to the charity trustees. And this may be in the form of recommendations for a specific action. Where we make a recommendation to a charity trustee, we will follow up with you to ensure that you have carried out these actions, that the recommendations that we've made. When dealing with concerns, we will not disclose the identity of those who have raised the concerns with us about your charity unless, number one, we were given permission to do so, or that we have a legal obligation to do so. It's important to us that members of the public can raise concerns with us in confidence. It's also important to note that contacting your charity does not imply that the Charities Regulator agrees with the concern that has been raised, nor does it imply any wrongdoing on the part of your charity. We are merely gathering information to assure ourselves before we act any further in relation to our powers. We will always request, or we will usually request the information on a voluntary basis. However, charity law does provide us with powers to formally obtain any information or any records from charities that are considered necessary for the purpose of our inquiries. If we are satisfied with the outcome and we are satisfied to close the inquiry, we will let you know in general terms that the concern has been closed. So I suppose to give you an indication in relation to the concerns that are raised in the compliance unit, you'll see there in 2014, the year of our establishment, there was 16 individual concerns raised about charities. In 2017, there's been a steady growth every year, and in 2017 there was 532 individual concerns raised in relation to charitable organisations, and a 29% increase in 2018, peaking at 686 individual concerns raised in relation to 423 organisations. And I suppose it's just important to note that the 423 organisations includes registered charities and other types of entities and organisations. So it's not just registered charities. Once a concern is received in the compliance unit, it's categorised, and this table here will give you an indication of the types of categories that come in. So we have governance issues, financial control and transparency, legitimacy of charity, private benefit, and harm to beneficiaries. In 2018, concerns raised in relation to governance issues raised by 6% to the previous year. One of the highest categories in 2018 was legitimacy of charities, peaking at 30% of our concerns received relating to this category. So this was organisations representing themselves as being charities in Ireland when they are actually not included in the Register of Charities. So some common issues identified through our compliance work, which includes meeting charity trustees, carrying out site visits, investigations, and just direct engagement with charity trustees. The first one there, trustee duties and responsibilities. Charity trustees are the people who exercise control over and are legally responsible for the management of a charity, and therefore they should inform themselves of the legal duties and responsibilities. It is apparent to us from our compliance work that some charity trustees are not aware of their legal duties. Managing conflicts of interest. Trustees should have a conflicts of interest policy in place, and this should be a standing agenda item for your trustee meetings. Conflicts of interest, if not recorded and addressed properly, can raise serious issues within a charity. It can lead to reputational loss, reduction in public confidence, reduction in funds, and harm to advancing your charitable purpose. A question that we would always ask when out on a site visit would be, would a reasonable person who was aware of the charity trustee's personal interest, would they believe that the charity trustee might be influenced by that personal interest when making a decision on behalf of the charity? And when that question is put to charity trustees, it's very important that they have a conflicts of interest policy to show and back it up that they discussed the issue, they documented it, and they're protected. They're protecting themselves. Internal financial controls. There's been a lack of financial policies and procedures. There's no segregation of duties. There's a lack of supporting documentation, no invoices, no receipts. One person having complete control over the finances, the operations, and the charity as a whole. On occasions, and I'm sure nobody does it in this room, but it has been known to happen, the signing of blank cheques within charities, and obviously that would be a no-no. The regulator would not like to see that. Transparency. Charities not publishing key finance and governance information. Members of the public not knowing how their donation was used. Abridged accounts being filed with very little information is not being transparent. There is no reason that a charity should be filing abridged accounts. Fundraising. Not using seal boxes. Not having two people counting and banking the funds. Keeping funds in your home overnights or for longer periods of time. This is a serious high risk to any charity, and there should be proper controls and procedures in place for fundraising and the collection of funds. Regular trustee meetings. Trustees are not meeting throughout the year. Decisions and matters relating to the charity are not being discussed, documented in the minutes, and there is no evidence available. There is no evidence to show how charity trustees came to a particular decision. The core standard 5.3 of the Governance Code states, at a minimum, your board agendas should always include reporting on activities, the reviewing of finances, and a conflicts of interest policy. A question that we get quite regularly within the compliance unit is, we are a small charity and our trustees meet to discuss day-to-day issues. How many board meetings should we have a year, given that we already meet regularly? So the answer to that is, how many meetings is entirely a matter for each charity to decide themselves. The Board of Trustees should be meeting as regularly as they need to in order to ensure that all charity trustees involved in the board are able to properly oversee the charity's activities, and that those who are managing and working in the charity receive any required approval in a timely manner from the Board of Trustees in order to ensure that they can carry out the day-to-day activities. I have another question here, and I'm just going to throw it out there because I'm sure it might be relevant to some people. We are a small charity, so the charity trustees discuss all relevant issues at weekly or bi-monthly meetings, which would not necessarily form board meetings. Will this suffice? So the answer is, all key decisions relating to a charity are required to be made by charity trustees. All decisions of the Board of Trustees should be documented so that there is evidence of when the decisions were made by the board. The fact that matters are discussed by other groups, committees, subcommittees, or any other type of group within a charity will not suffice if it cannot be demonstrated by reference to documented minutes that the Board of Charity Trustees discussed and agreed the course of action or the particular issue at hand. If there are regular meetings week to week or on a monthly basis that discuss day-to-day matters and a mix of more serious issues that are relevant to the board. One way of dealing with this issue would be to split the meeting into two parts. So the first part would deal with the day-to-day issues, and the second part would deal with the board-related matters, where them decisions would be duly recorded. So that would be one way that a smaller charity could address that problem or that issue. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. However, you will be getting a copy of these slides, and I would just like to highlight some important documents. The Raise a Concern document, and there's the hyperlink to it, our concerns policy, and our 2017 compliance report. If you haven't already read it, it is quite an interesting read, and I'm sure you'll find it very knowledgeable. And then we have some guidance documents available, managing conflicts of interest, internal financial controls, and obviously guidelines on fundraising from the public. So I'd just like to highlight them to yourselves. But that brings me up to the end of my presentation, so thank you.